important terms: autosomal DNA, mitochondrial DNA, and Y chromosome DNA. Basically, autosomal DNA is the kind of DNA that you're most likely familiar with. It's the DNA that is approximately 50% from your mother and 50% from your father. So, testing your autosomal DNA gives you information about your entire family tree as a whole. So, for example, unless you're a Habsburg, you probably have 16 great-grandparents, each of which contributed, on average, about 6% of your DNA. Now, the exact amount can actually be quite different, which is why a DNA test comes in handy. For many people, like myself, their ancestors came from a variety of different places. So an autosomal test can give you an approximate breakdown of where those ancestors came from. Let me now explain the other two types of DNA, starting with mitochondrial DNA. Inside every cell in your body are cell parts called mitochondria. And those mitochondria have DNA that is totally different from your main DNA, which is stored in the nucleus. It's different because 100% of your mitochondrial DNA comes from your mother. In other words, your mitochondria is the same as your mother's mitochondria, which is the same as her mother's mitochondria, etc., etc. So a mitochondrial DNA test can tell you information about only a very small section of your family tree, your matrilineal line. But unlike an autosomal test, it can tell you information that goes back much farther in history, like tens of thousands of years far. This is because, like I say, mitochondrial DNA basically never changes. It only changes in the rare case of a mutation, and major mutations only happen every few thousand years. So this means that if person A has a certain mutation and person B has the exact same mutation, we can know that they share the same matrilineal line. These lines are called haplogroups and are labeled with alphabetic codes. My haplogroup is called U. And finally, there is Y DNA. Y DNA is kind of the opposite of mitochondrial DNA in that it only gives you information about your father and your father's father and so on. And I should point out, this test is only available to males. You might remember from biology class that, generally speaking, females have XX chromosomes and males have XY chromosomes. This is because it's the presence of a Y chromosome that determines that someone is male. That Y chromosome only ever comes from one's father, and hence, like mitochondrial DNA, it never changes, except for mutations. So family tree DNA gives me a haplogroup map for my Y DNA as well. In my case, I belong to group RM343, also known as R1b, which happens to be, by far, the most common haplogroup in Europe, representing well over 50% of all men. So nothing too special there. Now, I should point out that if you're a female and want to learn about your patrilineal line, you're going to have to get a brother, father, or paternal uncle to do the test for you, because only males have Y DNA. So at this point, I want to give you a bit of a conclusion. I can't really say which of the 5 tests I tried is the best for you, because that really depends on your situation and interests. If you're primarily interested in health information and have money to spend, then I'd say that CircleDNA is hands down your best option. However, if it's genealogy that you're most interested in, there's a few more questions to consider. If you're an expert and want really detailed mitochondrial and Y-DNA reports, and once again you have the money to spend on it, then you'll definitely want to go with family tree DNA. However, if you're more of an average person and simply want to spend about $100 on a simple test, you'll want to go with either MyHeritage or Ancestry. I'd recommend MyHeritage for anyone who is Jewish or lives outside of North America, And I'd recommend Ancestry for those in the US or Canada. Finally, if you want a bit of both health info and genealogy info, or you want to find out your haplogroups without breaking the bank, I'd say that you can't go wrong with 23andMe.